I can't believe you're wearing that, Marcus said, his lip curling as he glanced at Nina's paint-stained sweatpants and oversized hoodie. Don't you care how you look anymore? Nina's hand froze mid-pour as she filled the coffee pot. After 13 years of marriage, his words shouldn't hurt, but they still did. I was working on a new piece in my workspace. You know, the one you turned into your office last month? It was just a spare room collecting dust, Marcus replied, straightening his designer tie as he checked his reflection in the kitchen window. Besides, you haven't sold anything in years. Time to be realistic. Their two kids, Ella and Jamie, sat silently at the breakfast bar, absent-mindedly poking at their cereal. At just 7 and 5, they were already experts at sensing the tension in the room. Mom's paintings are pretty, Ella offered quietly, only to go silent when her father cast her a sharp look. Nina handed Marcus his usual travel mug. I gave up everything for your career, for this family. I thought that was what we agreed on. What I need is a wife who looks like she belongs next to a senior partner at a law firm, Marcus replied as he picked up his briefcase. The firm is expanding and I'm up for equity partner. Image matters, Nina, and you don't fit that image anymore. He checked his phone, ignoring her expression. I've got that Sterling client meeting this morning. Don't wait up. The Sterling meeting, Nina had heard that excuse 3 times this week. As he opened the door to leave, she caught the faint scent of perfume on his blazer. Expensive, and definitely not hers. Daddy, will you come to my recital tonight? Jamie asked hopefully. Wish I could, champ. Big presentation tomorrow. Next time, I promise. Marcus ruffled his son's hair and walked out without a kiss goodbye. Nina stood there in the quiet, waiting until his car pulled out of the driveway. She let out a slow breath, then turned to the kids with a forced smile. Okay, troops, let's get going. Who wants to help pack lunches? Later that morning, after dropping them off, Nina stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom. Her auburn hair was tied up in a messy bun, and smudges of deep green paint still marked her cheek. She barely recognized the reflection staring back. A decade ago, she'd been a rising name in Chicago's art circles. Now, she was just tired. The spark in her hazel eyes had faded, replaced by a quiet resignation she hadn't realized had crept in. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Working late. Don't wait for me. Nina reached for the framed photo on her nightstand, their wedding day. She traced Marcus's smiling face with her finger, remembering when he used to look at her with admiration instead of disappointment. That unfamiliar perfume still clung to her thoughts. She wasn't naive. The signs had been there. Late nights, impromptu trips, the new cologne. She'd brushed them off. Maybe because facing them felt like admitting she'd lost something vital. Something she didn't even notice slipping away until now. But something shifted inside her that evening. Something cracked. She opened the closet, pushing aside Marcus's designer blazers until her fingers found a small box tucked far in the back. Inside were her old charcoal pencils and a weathered sketchbook. Her hands trembled as she flipped it open to a blank page. It was time to wake up. Nina sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by canvases she dragged in from the garage. Each one carried a memory. Her first show at an indie gallery, praise from critics, the sheer joy of creating. Memories that once defined her, now reduced to forgotten corners and dust. What are these, Mom? Ella asked, lifting a vibrant abstract piece. My old work, sweetheart, from before you were born. They're so cool, Jamie said, running his fingers along the textured surface. Why'd you stop? Nina's mind traveled back to that day, the day she packed away her brushes. She had just found out she was pregnant with Ella, and Marcus had landed a major promotion at his firm. Sometimes, she said gently, we make choices because we think they're right at the time. She didn't say how lonely those choices had become, or how easily she disappeared behind them. The phone rang, cutting through her thoughts. It was Claire, her old friend from art school. Nina, I've been trying to catch you forever. How are you? Oh, you know, Nina replied, watching Ella and Jamie begin their homework at the kitchen table. Busy, with the kids. Still letting all that talent collect dust? Claire's voice carried a familiar teasing warmth. The Nina I knew would have had 3 solo exhibits by now. That Nina didn't have a family to raise. And Marcus? Still drowning in work. Nina paused. He's busy. The firm's expanding. It sounded like a line she'd practiced too often, reassuring others about a life that didn't quite feel like hers anymore. Claire didn't push. Listen, I'm doing makeup for a charity event next week. You should come by the salon. We can finally catch up. I don't know, Claire. The kids. Get a sitter. Come on, when's the last time you did something for yourself? Before Nina could respond, she heard Marcus's key turning in the front door, much earlier than usual. She quickly ended the call. Daddy's home, Jamie called, leaping up, but Marcus brushed past him and headed straight for their bedroom. Nina followed, finding him rummaging through his closet. What are you doing home? Grabbing my tux. He held up the garment bag. The Whitman Foundation gala is next week. Black tie? Nina blinked. I didn't even know there was a gala. That's because you're not going, Marcus said, his tone clipped. It's a crucial networking event. I need to focus on the right impressions. And you'd be a distraction. Nina's face flushed. Let's just be honest, he added, glancing at his watch. You don't fit in at those things anymore. You barely speak to anyone, and your outfits, they're not right for the crowd. I have to get back. There's a meeting with Brevara in 20, he said, already moving toward the door. As he passed, that same perfume lingered again, rich, unfamiliar, unmistakably not hers. Nina walked to the window, watching his car disappear down the street. Her phone buzzed. Claire again. I'm serious, Nina. Come see me. Nina looked at her reflection in the glass, then at Ella and Jamie bent over their homework, then finally at the canvases sprawled across the living room floor. Each one was a piece of her, pieces she had packed away for far too long. And yet her hand hovered over her phone, hesitating. What was she even thinking? Showing up at a salon, letting Claire, who still had her life together, see this faded version of who Nina used to be. What if Claire pitied her? Worse, what if she didn't? What if she expected the same bold, relentless artist from 10 years ago, and all Nina had to offer were faded echoes and unfinished thoughts? The shame sat heavy in her chest, unexpected and sharp. She hated this version of herself, afraid to leave the house, afraid to be seen. She picked up her phone and replied, What time next week? This wasn't just about painting anymore. Something deeper needed to shift. Even if she didn't believe in herself yet, even if the thought of starting again made her stomach turn, she would try. For the first time in years, Nina felt ready to take that step, even if she had no idea what it might cost her. These projections are incredible, Delilah, Marcus said, leaning over his coworker's desk. Her perfume drifted up, designer, heady. You've really outdone yourself. Delilah smiled, brushing her perfectly styled blonde hair behind one ear. Learned from the best, she said. You've been such a mentor. Marcus adjusted his tie, pleased. At 29, Delilah was everything his life seemed to lack lately. Driven, polished, exciting. Everything Nina no longer was. Listen, he said in a low voice. About the gala, I found the perfect dress. Delilah's eyes sparkled. Valentino? Exactly. Marcus glanced down the hall before adding, We should probably arrive separately, just in case. Of course, she said, brushing his sleeve lightly. Though everyone already knows your wife never comes to these things. Down the hallway, Mr. Callahan observed the exchange from behind his office window, his frown deepening. He had known Marcus for years, sponsored his promotion in fact, but lately the younger man's conduct was raising red flags. Sarah, he called to his assistant. Get me the guest list for the Whitman Gala. That evening, Marcus sat in a dimly lit bar across from Delilah, their knees touching beneath the table. I just feel trapped, he murmured, swirling his glass of scotch. Nina doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. She's fine just being a mom. Delilah nodded sympathetically. It must be hard, being with someone who doesn't share your ambition. She used to be different. Back when we met, she was this fiery artist. Now, he shook his head. Now it's yoga pants and kids' snacks. Some women let themselves go after marriage, Delilah said, sipping her martini. They forget that a man like you needs more. Marcus's phone buzzed, a text from Nina. The kids are asking about their bedtime story. Are you coming home soon? Marcus ignored the message. He took another sip of his drink as Delilah continued. The gala will be a turning point. Everyone who matters will be there, and with the right woman on your arm. He thought about Nina, how she'd fumble through small talk at events, always saying the wrong thing, always making him look unpolished. Delilah was right. He needed someone who fit his world. I should get home, he said, though he didn't move right away. Of course, Delilah said smoothly, adjusting the hem of her fitted black dress. No need to spark any rumors in the parking lot. She leaned in and kissed him goodbye, leaving a smudge of red lipstick on his collar. Marcus didn't notice. When he got home, the house was quiet, dim, lit only by the small lamp beside the couch. Nina sat curled in her old painting chair, sketchpad in hand. She didn't look up. "The kids missed you," she said softly. "I told you I'd be late. Big presentation coming up. The Bravara account, remember?" There was something in her tone that made him pause, but he dismissed it. "I'm heading to bed." She watched him climb the stairs, then glanced down at her sketch. A woman's face stared back at her, emerging from the dark, her eyes hardened by tears turned to steel. Nina knew about the lipstick on his collar. She knew the late-night meetings weren't always work-related. She knew about Delilah. But what Marcus didn't know was that Nina had finally reached her breaking point. She wasn't staying quiet anymore. "Marcus, the Whitman Foundation gala invitations just arrived." His assistant informed him the next morning, placing a thick, cream-colored envelope on his desk. He opened it, already picturing Delilah in her striking red dress. Just as the phone on his desk buzzed. "Your wife's on line 1, the assistant added. Marcus sighed. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." "I heard that," Nina's voice cut through the speaker. "We need to talk about next week. The kids have their school play." He froze. "The gala is that night," she continued. "What gala?" "The one I wasn't told about." "It's strictly business," he said quickly, then caught himself. "Very exclusive. I didn't think you'd want to come." Silence. "I see," Nina said calmly. "And who's going with you?" "Delilah, from the design team. She knows the clients. It just makes sense." "Your coworker, the blonde one." "I don't have time for this," Marcus muttered. "The kids will understand, like they did when I missed Jamie's game and Ella's recital." He rubbed his temples as she hung up. He immediately texted Delilah, "It's confirmed. Next Friday." She replied almost instantly, "Perfect. I'll make sure everyone notices us." Outside his office, 2 junior associates murmured by the coffee station. "Poor Nina," one whispered. "She has no idea." "Oh, she knows," the other whispered. "Have you seen how Delilah clings to him at company parties?" "Same thing happened at her last job," the first replied. "Always chasing the guys climbing the ladder." Marcus, unaware of the whispers, spent the afternoon buried in meetings. By the time he walked through the door, Nina was setting dinner on the table. "Daddy?" The kids ran to greet him. "Not now," he muttered, brushing past them. "I need to change." He didn't notice their faces fall as he headed upstairs. Nina followed him to the bedroom. "We need to talk about this gala." "There's nothing to talk about." He grabbed a clean shirt. "You'd be miserable there." "Because I'm not good enough for your image anymore?" "You said it, not me," he said flatly, brushing past her. She reached for his arm. "Did you ever stop seeing me, Marcus?" He shook her off. "I have calls to make." But Nina wasn't done. She'd spent the afternoon talking to Claire, making plans. She watched Marcus shut the door to his home office, the faint trace of Delilah's perfume lingering on his clothes. A scent that used to send her spiraling now only confirmed what she already knew. But this time, she didn't cry. She smiled, because while Marcus was busy perfecting his image for the gala with his perfectly polished date, he had no idea what was coming. Nina picked up her phone and typed a message to Claire. "You're right, it's time." The transformation had begun. "I can't believe you've let him treat you like this," Claire said, inspecting Nina's reflection in the salon mirror. The Nina I knew would have never stood for this. Nina watched as Claire pulled out her hair tie, letting her long auburn hair fall over her shoulders. The Nina you knew didn't have 2 kids to protect. Her voice trembled for a second, just enough to betray how many nights she'd stayed silent for their sake. "And what are you teaching those kids? That it's okay to let someone walk all over you?" Claire began sectioning Nina's hair. "I overheard him talking to Delilah this morning, laughing about how you wouldn't dare show your face at the gala." Nina's hands clenched. "I don't even have an invitation." "Please," Claire scoffed. "I do makeup for half the events in this city. Getting you in? That's the easy part. The real question is, are you ready to fight back?" Nina stared at her reflection. The woman in the mirror looked tired, unsure, but behind that, something else was flickering. Something not quite dead. I don't even know where to begin. First, Claire said, lifting a comb, we fix this. She gestured to Nina's tired hair. Then she smiled. Then we remember who you are. Over the next hour, Claire worked her magic, layering and highlighting, adding warmth that made Nina's hazel eyes shine. Years of exhaustion seemed to fade away with every snip. When she spun the chair around, Claire asked, now, tell me about your art. I haven't painted in years. Liar, Claire said with a grin. I saw the paint stains on your hands the second you walked in. Nina smiled. I started sketching again last week. Nothing serious. Just show me, Claire said, as Nina pulled out her phone and tapped into her photo album. Claire's eyes widened at the sight of the recent sketches. Nina, these are amazing. You really haven't lost it? Marcus called it a hobby. Marcus is a fool, Claire said bluntly, setting down her scissors. You know what really drives me crazy? You were the top of our class. Galleries used to fight over your work. That was a lifetime ago. It doesn't have to be. Claire leaned against her styling station. One of my clients owns Morton Gallery. They're scouting for fresh talent for the spring exhibit. Nina's heart skipped. Claire, I can't. You can, and you will. Claire pulled out her appointment book. I'm putting you in twice a week until that gala. We're bringing back the real Nina Monroe. And who's that? The woman who used to set the art world on fire, Claire grinned. The woman who's about to make her husband regret every single thing he's done. Nina touched her hair, seeing a glimmer of her old self return in the mirror. The kids' school play is next week. Marcus is skipping it. Gala prep, of course. Then that's where we begin, Claire said. Show up, look incredible, remind everyone what he's throwing away. For the first time in years, Nina felt it, that flicker of passion, the old drive that had once fueled her life and her art. Okay, she said quietly, let's do this. Claire's grin widened. That's my girl. Now, let's talk wardrobe. By the time Nina left the salon that night, she felt different, lighter, stronger. Her purse carried a fresh sketchbook, pages already filled with ideas. The awakening had begun. She arrived early for the school play, her new hair softly curled, her outfit understated yet elegant. She sat front row, saving the seats beside her for Ella and Jamie. Is that Nina Monroe? Someone whispered behind her. She looks completely different. Did you hear about her husband? Another voice chimed in. The one always seen with that blonde from his office. Delilah Rice. She's a menace, pulled the same stunt at Preston and Ward, always targeting married execs. Nina's grip tightened on her purse. Poor Nina, she doesn't have a clue, one voice sighed. Actually, Nina turned around calmly, she does. The two women fell silent. One of them, Susan Park, whose daughter was in Ella's class, shifted uncomfortably before sliding into the seat beside her. I'm so sorry, she said softly. We shouldn't have. Tell me about Delilah, Nina interrupted. Everything you know. Susan glanced around and lowered her voice. My husband works at Preston and Ward. Delilah was there for a year, got involved with one of the senior partners. It wrecked his marriage. When he couldn't fast-track her promotion, she moved on. And now she's with Marcus. Everyone at his firm knows. Well, except maybe Mr. Callahan. He's old school. Wouldn't tolerate it. Nina tucked the information away. The Whitman Gala, will you be there? She asked. Yes, my husband's on the organizing committee. Why? Because I'll need a favor. That evening, Nina sat in the garage studio she'd just reclaimed, sketching by lamplight. Her phone buzzed. Working late again? Don't wait up. Client dinner. Marcus. She ignored the messages and focused on her sketch, a woman emerging from darkness, her features now distinct. Delilah's face, twisted with ambition and manipulation. The garage door creaked open. Claire walked in, balancing 2 coffee cups and a thick portfolio. My realtor friend came through, she announced. Guess who's showing their $1 million listing right next to the gala venue? Nina smiled. Perfect timing for a break, don't you think? Exactly, Claire grinned. And with the guest list Susan's getting us. She trailed off, noticing Nina's drawing. Is that her? No, Nina said. That's the enemy. Claire blinked. She has no idea what's coming, does she? Nina picked up a darker stick of charcoal and began shading the edges. Neither does Marcus. Her voice didn't shake this time. Not like it used to. There was no doubt, no hesitation, only resolve. Claire's expression sobered. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once you step into that gala. They think I'm invisible, Nina said, her tone hardening. The quiet wife who gave up her future, the artist who forgot how to fight, the woman too timid to stand up for herself. She looked her friend in the eye. "They're wrong." Her chest tightened, not from fear, but from clarity. For the first time, she wasn't reacting. She was choosing. Claire squeezed her hand. "Then let's make sure they see." Outside, the sound of a car in the driveway. Marcus, home late again, no doubt with the scent of Delilah's perfume still clinging to his jacket. But Nina didn't care. She had work to do. "Mom, what are you doing?" Ella stood in the doorway, watching Nina hunched over a large canvas. "Painting again, sweetheart," Nina said, stepping back to study the bold, sweeping strokes. "Want to help?" Ella's eyes lit up. "Really?" Nina handed her a brush. "Show me what you see." Together, they added streaks of blue and gold. Jamie joined them soon after, splashing in bursts of red. For the first time in years, Nina felt completely present, bonded with her kids through creativity, not just obligation. There was a purity in their laughter, a reminder that some parts of herself were never truly lost, just waiting to be rediscovered. "Daddy doesn't know I've started painting again," she said softly. "Let's keep it our secret for now, okay?" The kids nodded, solemn. They were used to secrets. "Mrs. Monroe?" a voice called from the driveway. Nina stepped out to find Susan Parker, envelope in hand. "I got what you asked for," Susan said quietly. "The complete guest list and seating chart for the gala." Nina accepted it. "Was it difficult?" "Not really," Susan said, then hesitated. "But you should know, Marcus and Delilah are seated at Mr. Callahan's table. She's listed as his +1. Nina's jaw tensed. "Of course she is." "There's more," Susan added. "I overheard her on the phone. Pick-up line at school. She's planning to announce something at the gala." Nina's stomach turned. "An engagement? I don't know. But whatever you're planning, be careful. Delilah gets dangerous when backed into a corner." After Susan left, Nina returned to the garage. The canvas had transformed, bursts of color layered into something wild and breathtaking. "Mom?" Jamie asked. "Are you sad?" Nina stared at the painting, a chaotic storm reshaped into beauty. "No, baby," she said. "I'm just ready." That night, she laid the gala documents across her bed. Guest list, seating chart, notes. Every detail counted now. Guest list, seating chart, program schedule. Nina had everything laid out across her bed. Her phone buzzed. Claire had sent photos from their last salon session. The transformation was striking. In just 2 weeks, Nina had gone from baggy sweaters and messy buns to something unrecognizable and powerful. Another message popped up. "Don't cook. Working Marcus." Nina almost laughed. He had no idea she'd stopped making his dinners days ago. She turned back to her canvas, outlining deep shadows into vibrant centers, storm clouds creeping over bursts of light. Her technique had changed. It was bolder now, edgier. Her old work was about beauty. This was truth. From the kitchen table, Ella and Jamie watched her silently, sensing the shift in their mother. "Is Daddy coming to the play tomorrow?" Ella asked. "Sweetheart," Nina said gently, "but I'll be there. Front row." "Will you wear your new clothes?" Jamie asked. Nina smiled. "Yes, and one day I'll teach you both how to stand up for yourselves, no matter what it takes." She painted late into the night, each stroke reconnecting her with the woman she used to be and the one she was becoming again. By morning, Marcus would rush off to another early meeting, never noticing the paint beneath her nails or the fire in her gaze. But soon, everyone would. "Hold still," Claire ordered, carefully applying the final stroke of mascara to Nina's lashes. "School play starts in an hour." Nina barely recognized her reflection. Her auburn hair fell in graceful waves, her makeup subtle but sharp, making her hazel eyes shine. "Are you sure this isn't too much?" "This?" Claire stepped back. "This is perfect." She unzipped a garment bag, revealing a sleek black dress Nina would have never dared to wear before. "I can't wear that to a school play." "Watch me," Claire said, holding it out. "This is the dress rehearsal. The real show is next week." 20 minutes later, Nina walked into the auditorium. Conversations halted, heads turned. "Mrs. Monroe?" Jamie's teacher blinked. "You look amazing." Nina smiled and took her seat in the front row, ignoring the murmurs. Her phone buzzed. "Sorry again for missing the play. Big client meeting with Delilah. Marcus." She typed back, "They'll survive. They're getting used to disappointment." The lights dimmed. Ella was a tree. Jamie, a wandering explorer. Nina cheered louder than anyone, snapping photos to show Marcus later, though she knew he'd probably never look. In the parking lot afterward, two teachers chatted nearby. Did you see Nina Monroe? Total glow-up. Finally, everyone knows her husband's fooling around with that blonde from work. Not for long, if she has anything to say about it. Nina smiled to herself as she slid into the driver's seat. Phase 1, complete. Back at the salon, Claire pulled out her tablet. Okay, let's review the gala plan. She flipped to a photo. The dress arrives tomorrow. Custom emerald green. It'll make that red thing Delilah's wearing look like a clearance rack reject. Susan says they're still seated at Mr. Callahan's table, Nina noted. Even better, Claire grinned. Guess who's doing Callahan's daughter's wedding makeup next month? Nina's eyes widened. Claire, you didn't. Oh, I did. He remembered your work from that 2015 gallery show, Claire said, placing her tablet down. He was disappointed when you disappeared from the scene. For the first time, Nina felt something stronger than fear. Certainty. It wasn't just validation. It was a reminder that she had once mattered. Without Marcus, without compromise. She pulled out her sketchbook and handed it to Claire. These are my latest. Claire flipped through them slowly. They're different. Darker, more powerful. Like me. The old Nina had chased perfection. This one embraced the mess, the wounds, the truth. They worked late into the night, practicing makeup, posture, the glide of heels. Nina soaked it all in. Her old instincts from gallery openings were coming back like muscle memory. But beneath the surface, her heart pounded. Not from nerves, but from awakening. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Near midnight, she returned home. Marcus was passed out on the couch, still in his suit. His phone was lit up with messages. Delilah. Nina didn't wake him. Instead, she walked into the garage and stood before her latest canvas, a phoenix bursting from flame, wings outstretched, reborn. She added one last stroke of gold, stepped back and exhaled. The metamorphosis was complete. Next stop, the gala. You look stunning, Delilah purred, adjusting Marcus's bow tie as the elevator ascended inside the Whitman Hotel. Her red dress clung to every curve, precisely as intended. So do you, Marcus murmured, sliding a hand to her waist. Ready to make an entrance? Always. She checked her lipstick in the mirrored panel. Mr. Callahan's already inside. Let me handle most of the conversation. The elevator doors opened to reveal a glittering ballroom. Chandeliers glowed above New York's elite in tailored tuxedos and couture gowns. Marcus, there you are, Mr. Callahan said, approaching with a flute of champagne. And Ms. Reyes, an interesting choice of company. Marcus forced a smile. Delilah's been crucial on the Bravara account. Has she? Mr. Callahan's eyes narrowed. Funny, I just reviewed that portfolio. Didn't see her name anywhere. Before Delilah could respond, a junior partner appeared. Sir, there's an issue with the Thompson merger. Excuse me, Callahan said, nodding curtly. We'll talk later, Marcus. As he walked off, Delilah's smile fell. He knows. Impossible, Marcus muttered, loosening his collar. Everything's been under wraps. Then why is he acting like this? Delilah scanned the room. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Whispers had started around the room. His wife? The blonde? Everyone knows. We should split up, Marcus whispered. Mingle. Fine, Delilah snapped, grabbing a flute from a passing tray. But stay close. I still have an announcement to make. Marcus watched her disappear into the crowd, her red dress drawing stares like sparks to dry tinder. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, unease gnawed at him. His phone buzzed. How's the gala, Nina? He ignored it and walked to the bar. Bourbon. Neat, he told the bartender. A voice behind him added, Make that two. Marcus turned. Mr. Callahan stood beside him, face stony. About the Bravara. Save it, Callahan interrupted. You know what your problem is, Marcus? You've forgotten what matters. I don't follow. No, Callahan sighed. You don't. But you will. Before Marcus could respond, gasps echoed through the ballroom. He turned, expecting a celebrity entrance. Instead, his glass nearly slipped from his hand. Standing in the entryway, beneath a halo of crystal light, was a woman in a breathtaking emerald dress. Her hair fell in soft waves. Her presence stole every eye in the room. It took Marcus 3 seconds to recognize her. It was Nina. His wife had just walked into the gala. And she looked absolutely magnificent. Well, Mr. Callahan murmured, watching Nina glide into the ballroom. Now this is interesting. Marcus stood frozen at the bar, his bourbon untouched. His wife moved through the crowd with an elegance he had forgotten, owning the space as if she had always belonged there. You never mentioned Nina was an artist, Mr. Callahan said, eyes still fixed on her. The Burning Sky series, wasn't it? Marcus turned, startled. You know her work? Of course, Callahan said smoothly. Still have one of her canvases in my office. Always wondered what became of her talent. His tone hardened. Though I'm beginning to understand. Across the ballroom, Nina was deep in conversation with the chairman of the Whitman Foundation. Her emerald dress shimmered in the chandelier light as she spoke passionately, hands animated. The chairman leaned in, clearly captivated. Sir, I can explain, Marcus began. Can you? Callahan interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been making a series of poor decisions. He set down his drink. Excuse me, I should go greet your wife. Marcus watched, helpless, as his boss crossed the room. Nina's eyes lit up when Callahan approached. Recognition sparkled. Mrs. Monroe, Callahan said, taking her hand. That painting in my office still draws more compliments than anything else. Mr. Callahan, Nina replied warmly. You're too kind, and please, call me Nina. Only if you'll call me Robert, he smiled. Now tell me, are you painting again? Actually, yes, Nina said. I've recently returned to the studio. Wonderful. We should discuss your new work over dinner, perhaps with the gallery board. From the bar, Marcus saw Delilah watching the interaction, her smile gone, jaw tight. She started toward them, but a nearby conversation stopped Marcus in his tracks. That's his wife, the artist, and he's been stepping out with that blonde? Did you see her dress? Makes the other woman look like a bad knockoff. Marcus drained his bourbon and ordered another. The night was unraveling. Nina's laughter echoed across the ballroom, pure, melodic. Mr. Callahan was introducing her to others, each one clearly intrigued. Your wife's quite something, the bartender commented, sliding him his drink. Yes, Marcus murmured, she is. And as he watched Nina move through the crowd, graceful and self-assured, he felt something awful settle in his chest. He had forgotten who she was. Worse, he had forgotten who she could be, and now the rest of the world was remembering, including his boss. What is she doing here? Delilah hissed, grabbing Marcus's arm. This is a private event. I don't know, Marcus replied, his eyes still on Nina as she chatted with a group of major donors. Her laughter again made heads turn. Well, do something, Delilah snapped. She's ruining everything. Before he could move, Nina turned and locked eyes with him. Her gaze was calm, not angry, not wounded, confident. She excused herself from the group and walked toward them, poised. Marcus, she said coolly, then turned to Delilah with a warm, practiced smile. And you must be the famous Delilah I've heard so much about. Delilah's cheeks flushed. This is a restricted event. How did you even get in? Oh, Nina said, her smile unwavering. Didn't Marcus tell you? I'm here as Mr. Rye, Callahan's special guest. He's very interested in my new series. Marcus opened his mouth, finally finding words. New series? Yes, dear. Remember my studio? The one you turned into your office? She turned back to Delilah. It's amazing, Nina said, her voice cool and steady, how creativity flows once you stop suppressing it. More guests drifted closer, pulled by the charged energy between the three of them. If you'll excuse me, she added smoothly, Robert wants to introduce me to a few gallery directors. She turned and walked away, emerald silk catching the light as she disappeared into the crowd. Her heart pounded beneath the fabric. Each step felt like crossing a line she could never uncross. But she didn't slow down. She had earned this walk. Robert? Delilah hissed. She's calling him Robert now? But Marcus wasn't listening. He was watching his wife. No, this woman, float through the ballroom, captivating people with ease. She didn't demand attention. She commanded it. When had she become this person? Or had she always been this way, and he just stopped seeing her? There was a time he had been proud of her light. Now it only threatened to expose his own shadows. Your wife's quite talented, said a voice beside him. It was the chairman of the Whitman Foundation. We've been discussing highlighting local artists in our new building. Her vision, her clarity, is exactly what we're looking for. Across the room, Mr. Callahan was guiding Nina toward a group of board members. She looked radiant, confident, alive. A tug on Marcus's sleeve brought him back. We need to make the announcement, Delilah whispered urgently, before she ruins everything. What announcement? He asked, still watching Nina. Our announcement, she snapped. About us, about your promotion. Marcus turned to her, suddenly alert. What promotion? The one you're getting, Delilah said sweetly, once we force their hand. His chest tightened. It was all a move to her, a chessboard she'd built atop someone else's marriage. For the first time all evening, Marcus truly saw her. And what he saw twisted something deep in his gut. But it was too late. She was already raising her champagne glass. And Nina was watching them, her expression unreadable, but her eyes knowing. She didn't flinch. She didn't smirk. She didn't need to. Everyone, Delilah's voice rang across the ballroom. May I have your attention, please? The crowd fell quiet. Nina stood beside Mr. Callahan, poised and still. Jacob and I, Delilah gripped Marcus's arm, have an announcement to make. Over the past few months, we've been working very closely. Actually, Mr. Callahan's voice sliced through the air, I have an announcement of my own. Delilah froze mid-sentence. Sweat gathered at Marcus's temples. Our firm has always valued integrity, Mr. Callahan said, stepping forward, both in business and in character. Tonight, I'm honored to announce the new creative director for the Whitman Foundation project. He gestured toward Nina. Mrs. Monroe has agreed to lead the artistic vision for our new building, bringing her extraordinary talent back to the New York art world. Applause erupted. Nina stepped forward, accepting the recognition with poise and grace. But inside, she held herself steady. This applause wasn't just for her work, it was for her return, for reclaiming every part of herself she had once given away. Delilah's face blanched, nearly matching her wine-red dress. That's not possible, she gasped. She doesn't even work. I've seen her portfolio, Mr. Callahan replied sharply. Past and present, her work speaks for itself. He turned to Marcus, his gaze piercing. Something you might have noticed had you been paying attention. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't speak. Then Nina turned, her voice calm and precise. Delilah, I believe you had an announcement about my husband's promotion? Delilah's eyes darted, searching for an escape. Because it's curious, Nina continued. The board hasn't approved any promotions yet. Isn't that right, Robert? Quite right, Mr. Callahan said evenly. In fact, we'll be reviewing all senior positions next week, including current partnerships. The threat hung there, unspoken but heavy. Delilah stepped back, her carefully woven plan unraveling thread by thread. Nina turned to Marcus. The kids' play was lovely, by the way, she said. Ella asked why you didn't come to see her as the tree. Her gaze didn't waver. What should I tell her? All around them, guests leaned in, listening, and Marcus stood in silence, exposed. Judging? Condemning? Nina said quietly, her voice even. Save it, I'm not here for explanations. She glanced at Delilah. I'm here because I finally remembered who I am. Then, after a pause, and who I'm not. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Marcus standing beside the woman he'd betrayed her for, watching as his wife became the center of the evening. The whispers followed her now, but this time they weren't about scandal. They were about Nina. Nina, Mr. Callahan called, catching up to her near the terrace doors. A moment? She nodded and followed him out onto the quiet balcony. The New York skyline sparkled behind them, a perfect stage for a life-changing conversation. That was quite an entrance, he said, handing her a glass of champagne. I had help. My friend Claire, she's a miracle worker. I wasn't talking about the dress. He leaned against the railing. You know, I've followed your career since your debut at the Whitman. My disappearance was life, Nina said, sipping her champagne. Marriage, kids, a husband who didn't support my work. He supported what he wanted you to be, Callahan said evenly, until he didn't want that either. Through the glass doors, they could see Marcus and Delilah arguing, their movements increasingly heated. I meant what I said in there, Callahan continued, about the creative director position. Nina turned, surprised. You're serious? Full-time, he confirmed. Creative control, your own team, and a salary that might surprise your husband. Robert, I haven't worked in years. But you never stopped being an artist. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. This is still in my office, your Phoenix. It's inspired more people than you know, even while you were hiding your light. Nina stared at the image, remembering who she'd been when she painted it. The role is yours, he said, if you want it. Through the glass, Delilah stormed out, leaving Marcus alone by the bar, looking small and adrift. What about Marcus? She asked. Callahan's expression cooled. His future depends on his decisions, starting tonight. Nina took a slow breath, tasting possibility on the breeze. When do you need an answer? Take the weekend. Think it over. He handed her a card. But Nina, don't let anyone dim your light again. She looked down at the card in her hand, feeling the weight of it. Not just the paper, the weight of freedom. Inside, the party continued, but the story had already changed. No longer one of betrayal. Now, it was one of rebirth. Marcus, wait! Delilah chased after him through the hotel lobby, heels echoing on marble. We need to talk. About what? He turned, his tie loosened, exhaustion in every line of his face. About how you tried to announce a fake promotion. About how you nearly tanked my career. I was helping you. She grabbed his sleeve. Everything I did was for us. There is no us, Marcus said, his voice cold. There never was. Guests turned to watch them, drawn to the unraveling drama. You don't mean that, Delilah whispered, her voice cracking. After everything. After everything, what? Marcus snapped. Lies? Manipulation? Planning? He yanked his arm free. Callahan knew about the Bravara account. He knew you weren't involved. I can explain. Save it, Marcus barked out, a bitter laugh. You know what's funny? While I was too busy destroying my marriage, my wife was becoming everything I claimed I wanted. Delilah's face darkened. She planned this. The dress, the timing, all of it. Yes, Marcus said flatly, and she executed it perfectly. He straightened his jacket. Goodbye, Delilah. You'll regret this, she hissed, being stuck with your boring wife and her little art projects. He paused. Her little art projects just got her a role you'll never touch. He walked away and didn't look back. Outside, his phone buzzed. Messages from coworkers, mentors. Disappointment layered over concern. But one message stood out. Nina taking the kids home. Don't wait up, Marcus stared at the words. How many times had he sent the same ones? How many times had he lied? The irony hit hard. His carefully constructed future was over. It had all been an illusion. And now, standing alone on a New York sidewalk, Marcus Monroe finally saw the truth. He had betrayed the one person who had always believed in him. And she didn't need him anymore. Nina sat in her garage-turned-studio, surrounded by half-finished paintings. It was 3 a.m., but sleep felt impossible after the gala. The hum of the city outside was a distant echo to the chaos she had finally silenced within herself. Her phone lit up. Please come inside. We need to talk. Marcus, she typed back, nothing left to say. The garage door creaked. Marcus stood there, still in his tuxedo, disheveled. The kids are asking where you are, he said. They're asleep, Marcus. Like you should be. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the canvases. These are incredible. Don't, Nina said, setting down her brush. Don't pretend you suddenly care about my art. Her voice didn't rise, but each word cut with precision. Measured, deliberate. I always cared. No. She stood, paint-smudged hands steady at her hips. You cared about how I made you look, until I didn't make you look good enough anymore. Her hands trembled slightly, but she didn't hide them. Not anymore. Marcus slumped against the wall. Delilah meant nothing. This isn't about Delilah. Nina's voice was calm. It's about you. About how you made me feel invisible in my own life. A beat of silence, the kind that swells with years of unsaid things. I can change. I already did, she said, gesturing around the studio. While you were busy with your affair, I was busy remembering who I am. She paused. The Whitman Foundation job? It's mine. She picked up a cloth, wiped her hands. I'm taking it. What about the kids? They'll have 2 parents who live separately, she said, instead of one who's never home and one who's dying inside. She looked at him directly. I've already called a lawyer. Marcus's face crumpled. Nina, please. I've rented an apartment near their school. We move this weekend. She turned back to her easel. You can keep the house. It stopped feeling like home a long time ago. And I stopped waiting for you to notice. Just like that? He asked, voice cracking. 12 years? No, she said, facing him. You ended our marriage months ago. I'm just making it official. Through the window, the first light of dawn colored the skyline. Nina felt lighter than she had in years. Not free of pain, but free of pretending. Go to bed, Marcus. She picked up her brush. We'll talk about the logistics tomorrow. He lingered. I'm sorry, I know. She didn't look up. But I'm not anymore. After he left, Nina stared at her newest piece. A woman walking toward the sunrise, shadows stretching behind her. It was finally finished, just like her marriage. This is your room. Nina opened the door to reveal pale blue walls strung with fairy lights. What do you think? Ella rushed in, twirling in place. It's perfect. Can I put my art desk by the window? Of course, Nina smiled, then turned to Jamie, who lingered in the hallway. Ready to see yours? The boy nodded slowly. His room was next door, space-themed with glow-in-the-dark stars scattered across the ceiling. Dad says this is just temporary, Jamie murmured. Nina knelt beside him. This is home now, sweetheart. You'll still see Dad, but this is where we live. Will he visit? He'll pick you up for his days, and you'll stay at the old house with him. She brushed his hair back. Different doesn't mean bad. Claire appeared in the doorway, arms full. These kids have more books than the library. My books. Jamie's face lit up as he rushed to unpack. Nina watched as her children began to settle in, hesitation replaced by excitement. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Callahan's office. Your office is ready. Team's looking forward to Monday. Mom. Ella called from down the hall. Can we paint something for my walls? Actually, Nina said, grinning, I have a surprise. She led them to what should have been the dining room. Instead, it had been transformed. 3 easels lined up side by side. One for each of us, she said. We can paint together. The kids shrieked, claiming their easels, already bickering over paint colors. Claire leaned in. You okay? Nina watched her children laugh, their joy filling the apartment. Outside, Manhattan stretched before them, full of untold futures. You know what? Nina picked up a brush. I really am. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus. Kids settled okay? She typed back. They're painting. They're happy. It wasn't perfect. There would be hard days, rough transitions, complicated calendars, but as she watched Ella and Jamie fill clean canvases with bold strokes of color, Nina knew she'd made the right decision. This was their new beginning. And it was beautiful. Marcus sat alone in the old house, surrounded by echoes. Ella's stuffed animals, Jamie's toy spaceships, Nina's coffee mug, gone. Only his pressed suits remained, hanging like ghosts in the closet. His phone rang. Mr. Monroe, Mr. Callahan wants to see you. 20 minutes later, Marcus sat stiffly across from his boss. His tie suddenly felt too tight. I'll be direct, Callahan said. Your position has become complicated. Sir, I can explain. Can you? Callahan slid a folder across the desk. The Seattle office is restructuring. It's not a promotion, but it's a fresh start. Marcus stared at the transfer paperwork. Seattle? Take it or leave it. But you can't stay here. Callahan's voice softened slightly. Sometimes, Marcus, the price of our mistakes is starting over. Later, while packing up his office, Marcus found an old photo buried in a drawer. Nina at his first company party, eyes bright with pride in him. He'd forgotten that look. His phone buzzed, divorce papers ready for review. Down the hall, he could hear Nina's voice, confident and sure, leading her team on the Whitman Foundation project. Laughter echoed. Passion hummed. Seattle suddenly felt much too close. He signed the papers without reading them. Sometimes pride costs everything, and sometimes it's exactly what you deserve to lose. And now I'm proud to present our featured artist, Mr. Callahan said, addressing a packed gallery. Nina Monroe. Applause filled the room. Nina stepped forward in a sleek black dress, calm and radiant. Her latest collection, Renaissance, covered the walls. Bold, powerful, intimate works of rebirth. In the front row, Ella and Jamie beamed. 6 months had changed them all. Weekends were now for painting together. Each child's work framed proudly in a corner of the gallery. Their fresh start wasn't just surviving, it was flourishing. Art isn't just about beauty, Nina began. It's about truth. About finding yourself when you think you're lost. She gestured to the canvases around her. These pieces are my journey, my renaissance. Her gaze swept the crowd. Mr. Callahan's proud nod, Claire's tearful smile, her children's bright, excited faces. Even her parents, flown in from Chicago, stood near the back. And slipping quietly through the doorway, thinner now, stood Marcus, watching from the shadows. He hadn't told her he was back from Seattle. Nina continued, her voice steady, her eyes shining. Someone once told me I'd lost my spark. But you can't lose what's part of your soul. You can only forget it's there. For a moment, her voice caught, not from nerves, but from the weight of what it meant to finally stand in the light again. She steadied herself, drawing strength from the faces watching her, those who stayed and those who had returned, however briefly. The crowd was silent, every ear tuned to her voice. In 6 months, she had transformed the Whitman Foundation project, reclaimed her place in the art world, and rebuilt her name from ashes. So this show, she concluded, isn't about what I lost. It's about what I found. and what we all can find if we're brave enough to remember who we are. Applause erupted again. People swarmed to congratulate her, to inquire about prices, to praise the show. But through it all, Nina felt peaceful, not triumphant, not vindicated, just whole. And for the first time in a long while, enough. Later, when the crowd had thinned, she noticed Marcus had gone. But he had left something. A small folded note placed beside her centerpiece, a painting of a woman stepping into light. "You were always extraordinary." "I'm sorry I forgot that." Nina tucked the note away. She turned back to her children, to Claire, to her life. Sometimes coming full circle meant landing somewhere entirely new. And sometimes, that was exactly where you belonged. Marcus lingered outside the gallery, watching through the tall windows. Inside, Nina laughed with Ella and Jamie. Jamie was eagerly explaining his painting to an amused collector. Ella clung to her mother's hand, basking in the warmth of attention. The scene looked like a photograph from someone else's life. He hadn't planned to be there. Seattle was supposed to be a reset, a quiet escape. But when he saw the gallery opening featured in the art section, he booked a last-minute flight. Now standing outside, watching her surrounded by admirers, radiating confidence and grace, Marcus finally saw what he'd missed. Nina had never needed his permission to shine. Mr. Callahan appeared at her side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. The gesture was subtle, but intimate. Nina's smile in response was calm and real. Through the glass, Marcus heard soft laughter and fragments of conversation, the sound of a life in motion. Without him, his children looked whole. Nina looked free. He turned away, bracing against the crisp autumn wind. His flight back to Seattle left in 2 hours. Back to his quiet apartment, to his reduced title, to his lonely dinners, to the silence that follows when you finally listen to what's been broken. "Daddy?" He froze. Ella stood in the gallery doorway, Jamie behind her. "We saw you through the window," Jamie said. Marcus knelt down, opened his arms. They ran to him. He held them close. "Your paintings are amazing," he whispered. "Mom taught us," Ella said proudly. "She says we're all artists." Marcus looked up. Nina was watching from inside. Their eyes met briefly. She gave him a small nod. Not forgiveness, but something close to recognition. A moment of peace, a quiet goodbye that didn't need words. "Go back inside," he said gently. "It's your mom's big night." They hugged him again, then ran back inside, where Nina gathered them close. Marcus stepped into the shadows, watching his family for one last moment. Then he turned and walked away, leaving them to their masterpiece of a new life. Some goodbyes are better left unspoken. So, the story has come to an end, at least for now. And if you're still here with us, dear friends, it means something of this journey has truly touched your heart. Nina's story is one of quiet strength and the rediscovery of self-worth. She represents anyone who has ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel small in their own life. But more than that, she teaches us that healing doesn't always come with thunderous change. Sometimes it begins with a sketch, a whisper of hope, a gentle reminder. You can only forget your spark, you never lose it. This message resonates deeply with Stoic philosophy. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Nina's pain wasn't her end, it was her path. She didn't erase her past, she transformed it. In a world obsessed with image, Nina reminds us of the importance of truth. Her art was more than just a comeback. It was her declaration of independence, of resilience. And in doing so, she also taught her children, and maybe even Marcus, a lesson in grace, dignity, and inner strength. If this story resonated with you, if it sparked something inside you, I invite you, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. This is more than storytelling. It's about healing, remembering, and rising. You're not alone, and every ending, no matter how hard, carries the seeds of a new beginning. So to you, the one still watching, still listening, thank you for being here. The story may have ended, but your story, it's just beginning.